All right, well, before we get to a talent show from Sam's family, we can probably kick off. I'm Emily Hughes. I'm the head of marketing at Mobilize. We're very excited to have our friends at GetThrough here today and to have all of you joining. Give you a couple more minutes to sign on while we're getting warmed up and doing introductions. 3 quick things to tell you. 1, your cameras are off and you are muted, so don't worry about that. 2, we will send out a recording likely later today, if not first thing tomorrow. And 3, we want all the questions. So if you have questions while these 3 are presenting, please put them in the Q&A. I'll answer some of them as we go along, but most of them we'll save to the end to ask the panelists in real time. So with that, I will hand it off to Kit, Joanna, and Sam.
Thanks, Emily. Sam, you want to go ahead and share your screen again? Perfect. Awesome. So, hi everyone. My name is Kit. I'm from Mobilize, and I will kick us off. My little Zoom thing is blocking the words. Great. So, quick agenda today. The 3 of us will introduce ourselves. We'll tell you a little bit about where we're coming from. Sam and Joanna are with GetThrough. I am with Mobilize, as I said. We'll then walk through just a high-level overview of phone banking and Through Talk. Then we'll chat about the really meat of the presentation, which is getting your program off the ground and best practices for how to pivot from knocking doors to making phone calls, which is obviously necessary this election cycle. And then, as Emily noted, we will end with questions. We want all the questions. Please try to be as engaged as possible. We're really excited to hear from you. And if you have any just concerns, considerations, throw them in the chat too. We are very receptive. Thanks, Sam. So quick introductions. My name is Kit. As I said, I'm a partnerships manager here at Mobilize, and I'll let you two introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Joanna, calling in from Baltimore, Maryland. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a senior sales manager at GetThrough.
And I'm Sam Briggs, calling from Columbus, Ohio. He, him, his, also senior sales manager. Been here about 2 years, and previous to that, did a lot of time out in the field.
Awesome. So first, what is Mobilize? That is where Emily and I are coming from. We are a software that connects mission-driven organizations with their supporters to make the world more just, inclusive, and democratic. We've been around for about 4 years now. We're really proud of the network we've built. We have several hundred partners that work with us. We have over 2.2 million supporters in our network of progressive folks. And we recently hit an exciting milestone of over 5 million shifts that have been scheduled on Mobilize. Shifts might not mean a lot to you right now. It will in a couple of minutes. A shift is when one person signs up to phone bank for 2 hours using Mobilize. So hitting that 5 million mark was recent for us and hopefully illustrates the real breadth of the network we've built here at Mobilize. We do what we do in 3 buckets. So really simple. The first is we help you recruit more supporters into your network. So list growth is something that is the first and primary goal of a lot of our partners. We facilitate that through A, the network I just mentioned, and then B, a lot of social recruitment tools that are built into Mobilize. Second big bucket is increasing supporter engagement. We make sure that any supporter that attends one of your events or works with y'all comes back again. They bring their friends, they donate, they help you grow the network, making sure that no supporter is a one-time supporter, a one-time connection. And then the last piece of this is using the network to turbocharge your effort. So I just mentioned those numbers, millions of shifts, millions of volunteers. There's a lot of progressive power on the ground right now and online. We want to make sure that each and every one of you is taking advantage of that network to accomplish whatever mission it is that you're hoping to mobilize your supporters around. And then the last slide here around what is Mobilize. The reason we included this is to really show you how and why we're sitting here with GetThrough. So we are the framework, as I said, that helps you grow your network and increase engagement with your supporters. But GetThrough is actually doing the meat of the work, which is helping you send those texts, make those calls on behalf of campaigns and organizations. So this workflow we're looking at here is all of the work that Mobilize is doing, helping you discover new folks, helping them bring their friends, and then Sam is running his mouse around where GetThrough comes in. So once Mobilize has driven you to this phone bank, that is where GetThrough is powering all of those calls that your supporters are making to voters all over the United States. And then Mobilize kicks back in with re-engaging those folks. So with that, I think, yeah, perfect. I will turn it over to Joanna and Sam.
Yeah.
25% reduction in flake rate. Hey, nothing to shake a stick at. That's as I circle it, that's pretty nuts.
Very, very impressive. And we next want to talk to you about getting your calling program off the ground. And we want to spend some time on this because we know that everyone watching this webinar are in different places when it comes to making that pivot from doors to phones. And this is a great opportunity not only to level set, but also provide some tips and best practices for running your program. Before we jump into that, I want to tell you a little bit more about GetThrough, where Sam and I are from. We launched ThruText, which is our peer-to-peer texting platform, back in September 2016. And we brought on our dialer, ThruTalk, 2 years later, back in 2018. And many of our team members are former campaign staffers and organizers. So it's made us a very client-driven and client-focused company. And you might remember us as Relay. Actually, I have my old Relay shirt on right now. We changed our name last April to GetThrough. And we've worked with, empowered some of the biggest political campaigns in the country. At the bottom, you'll see some clients we're really proud to work with, including a bunch of advocacy organizations that are also pushing for truly essential change. And there's lots of ways to reach people quickly these days, like robocalls and email blasts, but those methods don't allow for real conversations that are gonna move voters and change the world. And that was the inspiration behind ThruTalk. And ThruTalk is our TCPA compliant phone banking tool that calls cell phones, landlines, and VoIPs at auto dialer speeds. The TCPA is the Telecommunication Protections Act that says that you cannot use a computer to call a cell phone. And ThruTalk gets around that so that you can reach those essential voters. And since 2018, campaigns and organizations have made more than 165 million calls since 2018 using ThruTalk. And why is it important to call cell phones? Well, as you can see in this graph, nearly 60% of all Americans are cell phone only, including 2/3 of Latinx people, 3/4 of young people, and 2/3 of people who are below the poverty line. And the interesting thing about these numbers are they're from the CDC, and the CDC doesn't count you as wireless only if someone in your residence has a landline. So these are all the folks who have no landline in their residence, and so they cannot be contacted if you were using a landline calling phone banking tool. And it's incredibly important to reach and mobilize those young people, non-white people, and people who are low income, and ThruTalk allows you to do that. ThruTalk is very, very simple to use. So simple that we can sum it up in just 4 steps. The first being you upload your list and you don't have to worry about separating cell phones and landlines. And the second being you can build out your script, and we allow for drag and drop creation and custom variables. So it's very easy to do that. And after your calls callers will log in, and we'll immediately connect them to the calls until they log out. And we connect your calls for you, and we screen out any disconnects, answering machines, and hangups. So to put it simply, ThruTalk is a phone banking tool that works the way you need it to in this digital first environment we're in. And, you know, I feel like this slide is obvious, but I did want to cover it too. Like, why should you be texting and calling right now? And, you know, everyone on here knows that we're living in a truly unprecedented time when it comes to contacting one another. Events are being canceled and traditional outreach is no longer possible. Texting and calling are perfect pivots for a number of reasons. One being cell phone ownership is almost universal. Two, email is harder to break through in current times. You know, people are getting all sorts of things, letting them know what's canceled, what's not canceled. And it also requires opt-in. Text messages, however, have high read rates, upwards of 95%, and we've seen call pickup rates increase dramatically during the start of COVID-19. And lastly, what keeps us around is that real personal conversations can create compassionate connections when people need it the most, which is right now. And once you decided that you're ready to run your calling program and make that pivot, it's important to know who you should be calling to start. And that should always be your known supporters, right? You should start with these people because for obvious reasons, they're more likely to engage and volunteer and ultimately mobilize. But don't forget to contact local voters too, even if those are people you haven't engaged with before. They're in your community, you're in their community, and they're the people you should be reaching out to as well. And how to build your universe. And I believe Kit or Emily will be jumping in on this too, but there's a few ways you can get that universe built. One being, if you're working with voters, one, you want to use VAN, which is the public voter file. If you don't have access to that, you should contact your Secretary of State for voter file information. And also there's a host of data vendors out there who can supply you with cell phones and numbers and other data that you need to reach people, such as Target, Smart, and L2 and things like that. Another thing that you can do organically, though, is collect phone numbers everywhere. So on your website, if you're using, building a petition, if you're doing fundraising, when you're collecting volunteer signups, you want to collect those cell phones since you can reach those later on, and you want to make it required and not optional. And that's one of the easiest things you can do just from the start, is just making sure you have that field available for people to fill out so you can reach them.
Yeah, Joanna, that's exactly where I was just going to pipe in. The make it required is something we feel really strongly about. Any sort of front-facing event that you are hosting on Mobilize, whether it's a town hall, a book signing, a phone or a text bank, there are 5 required fields, and 2 of those 5 are email address and phone number. Some of our partners say, I really don't want this to be required. Our response is, if one of your supporters is unwilling to offer you their phone number, they're probably not a very strong supporter. That's the lowest hanging fruit. And it's very difficult to re-engage with these folks if you're not collecting that information from them. So wholeheartedly agree here. This is a best practice.
And Sam, feel free to jump into this, but when you're trying to decide on when to call and when to text, you should also remember that those 2 channels should go hand in hand and not just do one or do the other. It's really great if you couldn't reach someone on one channel, so you use the other. And you also have to remember, some voters only respond via one channel. Some people are more comfortable texting, whereas some love to talk on the phone and have some conversations. Also keep in mind that you cannot text landlines. There's no way to really get through into a landline. So try to have those cell phone numbers when you can. And, texting is great for quality control and internal volunteer management. And through text, we've built out another number of conversation management features so that you can quickly do quality control, chime in or interrupt the conversation if you need to. And even if you're running like an exclusive calling program, we just really think it's great to bring in some texting at some stage of the program, because one, it helps you reach those folks you weren't able to get on the phone, but also circle back around and follow up with them as well.
Another thing I'd add here, Joanna, is a conversation I have with partners a lot is another reason we should all be offering both text and call options for our supporters who are doing the work is to be cognizant of preferences and abilities. So folks who are hearing impaired are more likely to participate in a text bank than a phone bank, or someone who's super introverted, doesn't want to make calls, but is willing to throw out 100 texts after work. So being really cognizant of your supporters' different preferences is another reason why As you said, even if your program is totally centered around phone banks, offering 1 or 2 text banks is really important and is going to keep all of your supporters engaged.
Yes, absolutely.
Kit, you want to jump in? Or I can out.
Sure. So we recommend, again, thinking about supporter preferences and supporter abilities, meeting your supporters where they are. This is why we're really clear in delineating the different ways that you should be reaching out to and recruiting new supporters to bring into the network. The numbers we see are here in terms of how different supporters are engaging with different organizations that we work with. You can see email is the biggest chunk of the way that folks are recruiting new supporters. And then web, social, and SMS pretty much split up the rest of the big chunk of the way folks come in. Something that is really special about Mobilize is we are completely mobile optimized. So whether you are emailing out a link to a phone bank you're hosting on Mobilize, texting it out, tweeting it out, all of those particular pieces of content will fit right on anybody's smartphone, and the sign-up process is totally optimized for mobile as well. So again, we recommend meeting your supporters where they are. And then the second part of this is obviously tracking this. So if you see that your numbers are drastically different than this, maybe 50% of your signups are on social, obviously you're going to want to pump a lot more of your efforts into social the next couple of weeks and months.
I will also, as addendum to that, there are few silver bullets in campaigns, but having just been in the field for a long time and talking to folks, if a campaign comes and says we're having trouble getting volunteers, almost guarantee you're not doing daily call time to turn out volunteers. If you're just making calls every day to supporters, to people high on, the Democratic persuasion scores and van, whatever it may be, calling a friendly universe, talking to people, promoting your candidate, your campaign, your organization, and asking people to do stuff, you just do that every day for a couple hours and you will build a massive volunteer squad. You're not going to build it overnight, but if you're doing it consistently every day, forever, you will build a team, it'll be huge, and it'll grow on its own and reach a critical mass where it continually keeps growing as well as people bring in their friends. And as you saw in the Mobilize thing, 20 some odd % of people bring in people, that can become a self-fulfilling cycle as you go forward. So, definitely you have all these other ways, and these are great, and these are great ways you can scale up, but calling as well on the volunteer side, doing daily calls to volunteers, at the very least, your confirmations and reminders to folks who haven't responded to your Mobilize signups will be huge and a massive way to turn out your volunteers. Sweet, and hey, this is my section. So how to pivot from doors to phones. So let's get into it. So talking about shifting people from volunteers from doors to phones, it's really about shifting. You got to put people into actual shifts. But I'll tell you a little secret. So I ran Bernie's calling program back in 2016. We sent out a lot of emails. We made, upwards of 80 million, et cetera, calls. And we sent out a lot of emails to people saying, call now, please call now, jump in and call now. I sent those out to millions of people, without a doubt, just hands down millions of folks, and would get literally dozens of people to log in now. The ask wasn't actually for them to call now, because that's not how people make their plans. They don't sit around going, I wonder what I'm going to do right now. Let me open my email and find out how I can take action. What they will do is see it, decide they can't call right now, and sign up for a shift in the future. Really, those are just other ways to push shifts. As lots of, sign up forms can be just ways to collect data, call now is really just a way to push shifts. So don't expect to run a call anytime program. You don't know when people are calling, you can't hold them accountable. But also, dialers just work faster the more people you put into it. Whether you use us as ThruTalk or you use a landline only dialer like, hub dialer or van dialer or Callfire, anybody else, no matter what it is, the more people, the faster it goes. If you have 5 people calling alone, they're going to call less people, have less IDs, and have less of a good time than 3 people calling together. And it creates a virtuous cycle. Faster calls, shorter wait times, happier volunteers, they're doing more stuff. They will then come in more in the future and do more shifts, which means you're going to get faster calls and happier volunteers and more IDs, and they're going to do more shifts, and et cetera, et cetera. As we talked about creating that creating and sustaining volunteer base, This is part of it, of making sure they have really good experiences, which also means stacking them up so they have really good call efficiency. But also, we're going to talk farther on about holding people accountable and making sure people actually do what they do with remote, canvassing. People come to your office, you talk to them, when they come back, when they leave. Accountability is high in a canvassing environment. You're switching that to remote callers that are all at home. It's much harder. And so shifting is even more important because you can't hold people accountable if you don't know what they signed up for. So you have to put them in the shifts. And then if you do have people who are available outside of your shifts, volunteer recruitment. We just talked about daily call time, SMS, getting out those emails, responding to people who haven't confirmed yet. There's a lot of other things you can do there that can actually then build your bigger phone banks, build your actual events and your actual shifts to be bigger and more effective as they go forward. So shifting volunteers really comes down to actually shifting volunteers. And to that end, when you actually shift them, everything you do in person, you're going to want to do, online as well. There's reasons we do these things in person to encourage training and community and accountability and social pressure and all the stuff we do. We want to repeat that in the digital space as well. Reminders and confirmations. Next slide. I'll give you a preview. Guess what? It's built into Mobilize, and that's why it's so wonderful. But reminders and confirmations. And then people who don't respond to the automated ones, you need to reach out to them. You need to call them. Outreach to no-shows. Somebody doesn't show up. Why? Call them 5 minutes after the shift starts to make sure they didn't show up. If you think about a real life phone bank, if somebody walked in, made calls for 2 minutes and walked out and didn't talk to anybody, you would chase them down and say, hey, who are you? How can I get you in for a full shift? What's going on? If somebody didn't show up, you would call them. If they left early and just walked out, you would follow them. All of that you should be replicating in the digital space. Live trainings before your event on Zoom with all your people together so everybody can talk to each other and create that community feel. But also live group trainings means most of those people are going to make it into the tool. If you do individual trainings, they're less held accountable because they don't have that same social group pressure to then get in at the end of the training. So group trainings are great. Group breaks. You want to keep people signed in to dialers. And so you want people to all take breaks together so that your numbers stay up. Also, it's a great time to get together, share some stories, shake off the day, do the thing. So keep group groups going, debriefs after your call events are over to make sure people come together, following them if they leave early to get them onto the next shift. Really, everything you would do for in-person phone bank, replicate that for the digital space. Kit, follow?
Yeah, I would just dovetail and say I could not agree anymore on the importance of shifts. I recently had a call with one of our partners who has this huge base of supporters. So their numbers are there. They have the contact data, but no one was signing up. So I went to their Mobilize feed and I saw that every single opportunity they had for their supporters was evergreen. So sign in to make calls right now. And I said to them, the metaphor, the way I think about it in my head is, it's like when a friend says, oh yeah, come over whenever, but that's not an actual invite. When you get the invite to come over for dinner Friday, 8 o'clock, you're going to show up. So just thinking about human to human, what actually makes folks make a decision and show up, it's those shifts and it's holding the folks accountable.
Ooh, different. These are cool events. Different ways you can.
So the reason we included these is because the first bullet on that last slide said anything you can do or anything you're doing in person, whether the reminders, the confirmation, the outreach to no-shows, you can do online. We wanted to stretch that out a little bit and say any type of creative event you may have hosted in person, you can also host online. So extending that out a little bit, we wanted to show a couple of fun examples that we saw on Mobilize in the last month. We're getting some pandemic postcarding from a couple indivisible groups. So they're having folks sign on to a Zoom call around happy hour, bring their drink of choice, write out postcards to get out the vote. One congressional candidate hosted a Zoom game night. Again, this is just a really good excuse to engage with your supporters. It's low hanging fruit. You're not making an ask of them and you're gathering new emails, new data to reach out to. And then this last example is a text from home, which hopefully these folks use GetThrough to facilitate.
All right. And hey, guess what? Shifting you know, who makes that awesome and easy and perfect and wonderful is Mobilize, which is why we're here and why, you know, I love Mobilize so much. And looking over the example on the right, specific times, Friday, 5 to 7, Saturday, 5 to 7. These are the times you should be doing it. And, you know, even if you have a longer day, you have a GTV day, even on longer days of action, you should have exclusive shifts or specific shifts within that longer day to set people up so you can still hold people accountable, still know when they're showing up, even if your action is going from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or till 8 p.m. on a GOTV day. You want to keep building community, you know, around your things. A Slack, a Discord. It's great for live caller support, for building that community. Not everyone will get in, so don't make it a requirement of making calls or sending texts with you, but really push it hard. And the people that do get in are going to do a lot more because they have that social pressure, accountability, and community feel. Use your Slack channels, thermometers, GIFs, you know, mutual aid, have them ask each other for questions when they're on calls and things. This is really gonna both help you, you know, take the workload off of your staffers to help each other, but also the volunteer leaders will rise to the top. The folks that are really helping people, they should become leaders, trainers. They should train the trainers and get them in. Public sign up. So this is great for Slack. You know, you think of in your office, you had your list of who's signed up for today. You'd have them checked off if they were confirmed. You know, you had all that. It was public, it was out, it was up on the wall. Do that in Slack. At people's Slack names. These are folks who are signed up for today. Give them little check boxes if they're confirmed, little question marks if they're not. But, you know, the same sort of community, you know, accountability you would have in office, you can still do digitally. Social recruitment, group chat on Mobilize. This is great. Kit, tell me more.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 things here in terms of community building. The first is that we see that about 20% of all signups, so signups to text bank and phone bank, come from our social recruitment tools. So that means I sign up and then I send it to a couple of my friends who I know are interested. They go ahead and sign up too. That's one piece of it. The second is group chat. This is a new feature that we've recently built. We're really excited about. For every single event that your organization is hosting on Mobilize, there is now a group chat facilitated with that event.
Ooh,
so folks can write in questions about logistics. So, hey, I lost the Zoom link. Can someone send it to me? Or more personal things like, I'm so excited to meet other progressives in this small town I live in. Let's canvas together when it's safe. Things like that. We're really excited about it. We think, as Sam's saying, this will do a wonderful job continuing to build community.
That's amazing. And I will say even better because it is kind of a hurdle to get folks into Slack or Discord or something. And you do want to be able to have that live interaction, especially with callers who are calling from home so they don't wander off while they're waiting for you to respond to their email or something. So having staffers in that group chat to do some troubleshooting, I may need to readjust my slides. That's amazing. What a wonderful feature. Last point here, I'd say repeat events, make them predictable. If you have events every Tuesday at 7, you'll eventually get your Tuesday crew and there'll be, you know, Tuesday callers and they'll do Taco Tuesdays and they'll do other stuff. And it makes community, which brings accountability, increased attendance, and easier for you to reshift people because they're just like, are you come back next Tuesday? You join in the crew, sweet, see you, you can do fun things. So repeatable events, don't make it random, so that people can plan their lives and actually be able to do this. And that's how you get repeat volunteers.
So related to these shifts and the importance of shifts is making sure that folks actually show up. This is something we spend a lot of time doing. Sam has mentioned repeatedly confirming that folks are showing up. So I want to briefly walk through all of these steps that Mobilize is taking to ensure that your folks show up. So we're sending 3 pieces of automated outreach. The first is the second one of your supporters signs up for an event, they receive an automatic confirmation email, and attached to that email is an e-calendar invite that is placed right on their calendar. They don't even have to click, yes, add to calendar. Inertia is powerful. We are doing it for them. The next thing we're sending is exactly 1 day out, both a text and an email reminder, again, providing the logistics of the event. This also gives folks the opportunity to cancel if something's come up, and then Mobilize will update that person's RSVP status in the back end of your Mobilize account. So all of your data is updated in real time and you can continue to plan accordingly. The last piece of this is after the shift. This is actually where most organizers get the most excited. we are asking all of your attendees for feedback. So sometimes folks will say something as basic as, it was a lot of fun, I made a couple friends, and sometimes they'll say, this was my first time phone banking and you did not provide ample training. So that's really important information for the organizer to, again, adjust future events accordingly. All of these automated points of outreach are completely baked into Mobilize. If you have the most bare bones of our package, this is included. We want to save you time, and we want to help you ensure that all of your supporters are showing up.
Look at that 90% stat. That is, I mean, that shows you reminders, confirmations. Get it done. All right, second big point, takeaways for moving from doors to phones. Why are doors wonderful? You have real conversations. People are nicer, right? Because you're in their face and you're able to actually, talk to them about the issues. You think of all the deep canvassing, experiments, things going on, they happen on the doors because of that longer form conversation. We want to replicate that as much, on the phones as much as you did on the doors. A lot of people think about phones as a single point of data, not only because tools can be hard to use, you don't want to give people a Google Sheets script that's 5 pages long and that's a lot of training, but also just because it's been inertia. As kids said, inertia is powerful, and folks have done something a certain way for a long time. A lot of tools are based by the minute and it actually encourages you to have shorter conversations. But really, if you're bringing doors to phones, you want to replicate that doors experience. So encourage listening, conversation with voters. I'm a big fan of this. You should be completing forms and signups and things live on the call with somebody. If you're at a door talking to somebody and you said, hey, can I fill out this commit to vote card? And they said, yeah, but I'm not gonna talk to you. Everybody's gotta go, slammed the door in your face and walked away. They're probably not gonna complete that card. If you're on the phone with somebody and they say, yes, I'm gonna attend that event. And you say, sweet, let me confirm you. And they go, oh, I don't got time for that. Are they really gonna come to your event? Guessing not, probably not. So, filling out the stuff, save your staff time because you're not doing a bunch of work post events, makes it easier for your voters or your supporters because they're getting everything, confirms, all this stuff while on calls for things they're doing. So really try to move as much of your workflow into the call so these conversations are longer, they're more, they go through and they have more conversations. Ask until you get a yes or a no. Again, we usually have just one ask. Can you get a yard sign? Can you do something on phone calls or texting? But if we're placing doors, at the doors, you may talk to more things. Hey, have you seen our social? Have you checked our website? Do you like this video? Can you do some data entry? Can you volunteer on election day? There's a lot of other things you can ask and you can keep going with that. Definitely don't stop at the first one. If somebody says yes, keep going until you find what they won't do. If they say no, keep going until you find something they will, right? But really building that out. And then I think just knowing that, especially in these times, you are doing multi-channel, but calls are never just one thing. You're going to do ID calls and run across people who want to volunteer. You're going to do volunteer recruitment calls and run across undecided folks who you need to persuade. You're going to be doing fundraising calls and run across non-supporters, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So voters may never pick up again, right? That may be the one call you're going to get with them. And so you want to make sure you're really taking advantage of it fully in that moment. And we'll say with Through Talk, because in the end we do have a platform here. We give you unlimited call lengths, so we just have a flat cost per call to encourage people to have longer conversations and not get punished financially for that. We also have multi-paths, and I think this is really key to being able to move to real conversations. So what that means is instead of just having a support question or something, actually building out a bigger flow. And you can see in this script here, if I have a name ID, if I run into strong supporters, oh, they want to volunteer. Yeah, I ask them how they want to volunteer. Let's say they want to make calls. Oh, love it. It's green. Well, then I just embed a Mobilize page right here. Phone bank, search to their zip, already ready to go. And then I can sign them up for an event right here on the phone call. So they don't need to leave. They're going to get that instant confirmation Kit was just talking about while we're here on the call. They're going to be in, the reminders, the confirmations, right? Why wait? Why depend upon them to do it on their own? You can do this. But in addition to that, let's say they don't sign up, you can send an instant follow-up with your links so then they can receive it and they can sign up on their own. If you run into undecided folks, talk to them about issues, do a little persuasion, talk to them about it, and then re-ID them and move them forward. Or send them a website so they get more information. But really building out, making sure your tool, but also your flow is built out to take advantage of every call and not just, hey, we'll call you back later about that, because maybe they don't pick up and you never actually get to complete that conversation. So definitely try to capitalize all the time. This is weird spacing, so I'm actually gonna undo and then represent. There we go, sweet. I guess other presenters, anything else on real conversations?
I don't think so. I'm answering a couple questions in the Q&A, but I think you definitely covered everything, Sam.
Sounds good. Then we'll move on. Accountability is key. This goes back to shifts again. You know, like the friend example, if I say help come over sometime and they don't, I don't, you know, whatever, I can't get upset with that. If I say come over on Friday and they don't, then where were you? I was waiting for you. I had no other player on my Xbox. I don't play Xbox. I don't know why I said that. Anyways, I'm a PlayStation person. So, but have specific signups. Get them in, right? Back to calling whenever just doesn't work. There's no accountability there. People don't stick to it, and your numbers will be way lower. And it's a lot of spinning your tires of sending emails, trying to get people to do things, and really not seeing the results from that. So, Mobilize event, you know, Mobilize events obviously are perfect for this.
Can I cut in for a sec, Sam?
Absolutely. Yeah, please.
Something that we recommend on Mobilize is when you see those cancellations or those no-shows come into Mobilize, we have a messenger system straight from Mobilize, and you can actually filter your supporters by anyone who canceled or didn't show up. So we recommend that the second you see that they've canceled or that they haven't shown up, you have a draft email written for whenever this happens and just shoot it in their inbox right away. They're probably aware that they were supposed to attend an event happening at that time or that they just canceled. So while they're still relatively engaged and while it's on their mind, let them know that you're really looking forward to seeing them at the next phone bank.
Brilliant.
Including a link, of course, to that phone bank to make it as easy as possible.
Beautiful. And I would say, and the next thing, just making sure you're tracking the right metrics. One thing on calls, especially if you've done doors, when you're doing doors, the number of doors somebody does is a great accountability for the activity, right? It shows how much they're out there, how many people they talked to, what they did. People tend to want to use calls as a metric when you switch to phone banking, but calls may not actually be a metric of activity if you're using a dialer, because when folks are using a dialer, whether it's us or Hub Dialer or anybody else, the speed is set by the tool itself, and it's based on how many callers are in there and pickup rates and all sorts of things. So higher call number really just means shorter conversations. If you have two people with approximately the same amount of time in the tool and one person has much higher number of calls, it means their average call length was shorter because they were hanging up more often, which, depending on what you're trying to do, and if you're trying to replace real conversations from the doors, may not actually be what your end goal here is. So using calls as a leaderboard metric could actually encourage bad behavior because folks are going to try to hang up faster to boost their call number, as opposed to having those more interactions and the conversations that change minds and win elections. So you're going to want to use activity as a higher metric than calls itself, because calls will just tell you more about the conversation length than about the actual activity itself. On ThruTalk side, we give you minutes and seconds for how long people are in calls, waiting for calls, doing data entry, and in not ready in their break mode. So you can compare active minutes to inactive minutes and find exactly how active somebody was, which is a great leaderboard metric. And other tools offer similar things as well. Not as good as us, but you know, that's why. Other lessons learned from canvassing. Quality control. You think of canvassing, you don't know what's happening on the conversation. You only get the data back and have to then figure that out. There's a lot, same here on calling, where you're not going to necessarily have input into the conversation, you know, depending on the tool, but you also got to look out for eavesdropping laws, make sure everybody involved is in a one-party state, so you don't actually get in trouble if you do monitor a call. But for the most part, you're not going to have data there. So we do quality control a lot on canvassing, right? Where we will text or call some percentage of people who have results to make sure that somebody actually went to their door, to make sure that person was nice, and to do all those things. I believe that's a big part of accountability on a calling program as well. Taking some random sample of your contacts and then some non-random samples, so some from the best people to make sure they're legit, probably before you move them into leadership roles, and then a little bit from the worst people to be able to see what's going on. Do they need to get retrained? Are they trolls? Are they just not good at this and they need to work on a different volunteer assignment? All of that, you can text people. Texting's great for this, and say, hey, somebody called you yesterday, how did it go? And then they'll say it was great, or actually let's talk about it, or what are you talking about? Nobody talked to me. And be able to work through their data that way. So quality control, great holdover from canvassing. Daily report cards, people get their instant activity when they're canvassing. They know how many doors they've knocked. On dialers, that's not necessarily the case because a lot of the activity happens in the background. So giving people that sort of data on a daily basis, you can send them, I just send easy report cards to say, like, here's what you did today. Here's a link to sign up for another activity, Mobilize link, make that part of your email going outbound after the event. All going to be useful and really hold people accountable. Another story, in 2016 Bernie days, I started sending out report cards then for people who were below 50% average in call minutes, basically. Everyone who's below 50% got an email, and it just said, here's what you did yesterday. Our average was blank. Next time you log in, can you do this many minutes plus 10%? And it had a link for the next event. We sent out tens of thousands, and I got a couple people who were very upset, but it's a statistically insignificant number. But for the people who did receive it, every person who logged in again did up to, on average, about 50% longer shifts the next time they came in. Remote callers didn't necessarily having somebody there with them. They may never have talked to a staff member. And so really, if they didn't log into the Zoom, if they aren't on your Slack, they don't have that same sort of interaction. So letting them know what's going on, what's happening, does encourage longer shifts in the future. And then leaderboards, everybody likes a leaderboard. Just make sure you're using, the correct metrics, activity, percentage, volunteers recruited, things like there, and not necessarily just calls, since calls might put you in a bad situation. Okay. You unmuted?
Yeah, the one other thing I would add is obviously the activity metrics you are talking about is the number of calls in a given shift. I do want to plug that you can also track the number of shifts that each and every one of your volunteers has participated in as well. In Mobilize, we see folks being really strategic with our stats leaderboard. That's what we call it. So identifying super volunteers, reaching out to them, asking them to create or to host their own phone banks, or in real time, their own house parties, things like that. So not only just tracking that, but actually using that information to broaden your distributed organizing program if you do have one. And if you don't, just giving a shout out to one of your super volunteers on Twitter. That means the world to folks. I would love to get a super shout out from all of the folks that I've phone banked for. I've never gotten one, but something that I highly recommend.
And shifts is a great metric because it is about, people getting in and doing activity versus the number of quote unquote calls during that activity. And if you have somebody, if you're tracking shifts, the person on the top, they're probably going to be your best caller. That's best minutes. All right, sweet takeaways. Let's wrap it all up here. So what do you want to do if you're shifting your doors into phones? The biggest thing, sign up folks into shifts. We've said this a million different ways, for accountability purposes, for tracking purposes, for expansion purposes, for just pure effects, because more people equals faster calls. In whatever tool you use, putting people into shifts is the single best way to shift your program over, to shift your program from doors to phones. If you remember nothing, remember shifts. Second, try to replicate canvassing, as much as you can in your calls. Have real conversations. We have dynamic, going back, Mobilize is great for shifts. Replicated doors. We have, in Through Talk, we have dynamic scripts. We got flat call for pricing, right? But really trying to encourage those real conversations. In your training, we talked about this, in your building that community, right? Building people all together. And then last, hold people accountable. You need, Mobilize will tell you what they signed up for, what they've done, your stats leaderboard, all the stuff. Through Talk will tell you how many, what they actually did in the tool as well. Making sure that people are signing up specifics and then hold them accountable for that. You're going to grow a much larger program that will self-replicate as well and keep building it out as people, invite their friends and move forward. So those are the 3 takeaways. Kit, Joanna, tell me what I missed.
No, that was great. We have some questions for GetThrough. We answered a bunch about Mobilize, but I want to ask you guys in real time a couple of these questions. The first one was, is there a minimum number of cell phone numbers that can be put into a text bank?
No. Once you use through text, you'll see that the features are built for scale texting, but there's no minimum needed. So you can go in there with your list, no matter how small, and still have those one-to-one conversations.
Great. Similarly, are there times and days during the week that you found are best for reaching people, especially for older individuals?
Every location demographic will be different, so there's no hard and fast rules here. I would say like splitting your list between seniors more in the daytime or early evening, and less as the day goes on. As the day goes later, you'll get less and less contact rates. Flip side amongst non-seniors of as the day goes on, the contact rates will get a little better. So I'd say that's just a basic one. Throughout their evenings just tend to be better. Although with COVID, it's a little, has changed a little bit more as people were home and just high unemployment as well. And then on the flip side, Sunday afternoons, evenings, I mean, pre-COVID were probably some of the best pickup rates because people were home, there was less activities going on, there was stuff happening for the weekdays. Conversely, Sunday mornings, some of the worst rates for obvious reasons. Post-COVID, that's kind of expanded out to more of the week, but Sundays still have pretty good rates. It's easier to get volunteers and you got people picking up their phones. So I'd say that's probably a good spot to start.
Good to know. Someone asked, most people won't answer the phone unless they recognize the number. What do you think about leaving voicemail messages?
So you get to set your number on our tool. So you do get to say what the caller ID is going outbound. So you could use your own number. But in the time, because of the way our tool works at scale, it would say on voter calls, in the time it would take you to listen to the message and leave a message, you could have talked to 2 or 3 people. And those live calls are just gonna have more of an effect than a voicemail. Anecdotally, I haven't checked my voicemail in months. I don't know when I will. My personal, I check my work, obviously. And then, I mean, so they don't do that. I would say the flip side is on the volunteer recruitment side, Sister District did a study last year with their own volunteers that found that the statistically significant recruitment was a call plus a text. They tested that against a call with the voicemail. They tested that with just text, just call, just email, and call plus text actually got people to the event more than any of the other ones. So voicemail, people just don't check them in time, and you know the ROI on the time it takes you to leave them versus what you get out of them doesn't happen. Now your demographics will be different, your volunteer base is different, you know, so not a hard and fast rule, but in our side we tend to say do something different.
Just to be really specific on the call plus text workflow, because that's something I've seen work really well too, couple them in the same 30 seconds. So the second you hang up the phone, because that person didn't answer, send them that text, because oftentimes they probably watch their phone ring with an unfamiliar area code. So they have their phone in their hand and they are curious about who called. So it's a 1-2 step.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Erin, I will forgive you for asking this question, but Erin asked that if GetThrough and Through Talk scripts will embed with Action Network like they do with Mobilize.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we'd want to test it out, but Action Network, I will say Action Kit, you can use their user IDs and like pre-fill a petition because the user ID pulls in all the petition stuff. So from the petition side, Action Kit works really well in the embed. And then Action Networks, you can put your events in, your events maps can get embedded.
But she should be using Mobilize.
Yeah, but I didn't talk about that. Yeah, okay. but Mobilize has better shifts and easier exports. I mean, that's what I'll say. Like, it's much easier to get your data out of Mobilize.
Okay, who is the competition for GetThrough and where is GetThrough better?
We don't really have competition because everybody else can only call landlines. So our competition, quote unquote, is like a hub dialer or van dialer or Callfire, but they're all predictive dialers, and so they can only call landlines. As far as people that can call cell phones at speed, it's us, and it's us. So yeah, that's what they call us. If you want to call cell phones at speed, come to us. There's like enterprise level. If you rent a call center, you could pay lots and lots of money to get some enterprise level software, but at the campaign level, that is the thing that sets us apart and keeps us unique.
Great. We had one final question that was just about general costs for GetThrough and also for Mobilize. Kit, if you want to answer that one live too.
Do you go first?
So Brom, I see that you're from a state Senate race, wondering, so just high level for everyone's awareness, Mobilize prices, Mobilize charges based on the size of your program. So obviously Joe Biden, who's currently using Mobilize, pays a lot more than everyone else. We have small nonprofits, we have huge advocacy orgs. So our pricing structure is very flexible and varied. I will send out, Brom, I'll grab your email and I will send you the pricing for the state Senate race. And anyone else who has any questions, we will make it very easy to contact us, and we will be contacting you as well. So I can answer any specific pricing questions right away after this call. And then Joanna, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, and on the Through Talk side, so GetThrough has 2 tools, Through Text, which is our peer-to-peer texting tool. What that is just 8 cents for every outgoing message you send and no charge for incoming messages. So we pay, it's a per message plan. And on the through talk side, which is the calling side, it's 5.5 cents per dial. So as Sam was saying earlier, we don't charge by conversation length, but just by the dials placed.
We just got one other question for you, Joanna and Sam. Is an automated text message available when you're following up a call with a text so it doesn't take forever to text?
Not built in, no. On the talk side, we do have instant text when you're talking to somebody, so you can send them like a link or a polling place or something there while you're on the phone with them. For folks who don't pick up, you don't actually get connected to those calls. You'll never see them on screen because they just happen in the background. So we don't automatically send text messages. There might also be landlines mixed in there. But we do have easy campaign building and through text. So you could do it within minutes, although it isn't automated.
Great. Oh, and it looks like one more clarification to the pricing information you shared, Joanna. Is it per dial or per completed call?
It's per dial.
Okay.
If we open an outbound line, that counts as the dial, no matter what happens after that point.
Got it. All right. I think that's everything. Thank you so much to our friends at GetThru for joining us today. And thank you everyone for attending. We will follow up with a recording and some of the materials that you asked for in this session. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the work that you do. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.